me now?
Philip,
Yeah, I hear you. I hear
Philip,
you.
ya está, ahí está.
Do you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Ya, para que comience, Philip.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't hear the introduction, but I'll start anyway. First of all, thank you to the organizers, to Professor Mauricio Mizrahi, and for the other organizers for inviting me to speak. I have been a member of the Parental Alienation Study Group for several years. I've attended many of the conferences. And in the course of hearing the speeches, both by alienated parents and by the professionals and the academics dealing with matters, I have heard a great deal about the terrible pain and suffering caused to children and their families when a couple break up and divorce, and of course, even more so when there is alienation. And therefore, I tried to look at things from a different direction in order to persuade governments and other organizations that it is important to take action to prevent parental alienation from happening, to identify as early as possible when there's a problem of a child who is between the parents, and to intervene as early as possible in order to prevent the pain and suffering. And my understanding is that there's a need to change priorities. Emotionally charged campaigning is important, but not enough. Politicians need to be convinced of the social importance of change. But in order to persuade them to actually do something, we need to show that it will lead to economic advantages and savings. So this presentation is in two parts. One is to identify the costs, both in human suffering and the financial costs of family breakup and alienation. And in the second part, to show what can be done and needs to be done. And all this is part of a project, a research project that I have been involved in with a professor of economics, a health economist, and a psychologist who is also a lecturer at Haifa University. And we are looking for partners or funding for this research. I'll come to that later. Parental separation and divorce cost money. There are effects on the individuals because there is a reduced income, usually on the woman, but also sometimes on the man. The larger issue is the consequences. The trauma of divorce reduces the lifetime earnings of the parents and of the child. The effects on the state, therefore, are reduced income from taxes, and where a parent becomes unemployed or a child is because of some disability, which may be physiological, social, emotional, or psychological, is unable to work, then he will have to be supported out of the state treasury in social security, unemployment pay, and supplementary benefits. And there is an effect on employers as well, because we have seen in research that's been done that where a parent is involved in adversarial proceedings in court, and they are running around talking to the lawyers, spending days in court, finding witnesses, being consulted by experts, they are less able to do their job. And a researcher in Malta is doing work on accidents. Work-related accidents which may be caused by inattention because of stress and distraction. The human costs. So there is a decline in physical, psychological, and emotional health of the children and the parents, legal costs, educational effects, and social work inputs. I'll deal with each of these briefly. This is a chart of the ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. The ACEs method was developed by Kaiser Permanente, which is an insurance company in the United States, which needs to know, because it costs them money, what are the indicators that predict psychological and physiological impact. And they discovered there are 12 items in the list, or 10 items in the list. And as you will see from the list on the left-hand side, where a child is being alienated, that is psychological maltreatment, emotional neglect and physical neglect because the parents are too busy fighting each other to look after the child. The loss of a biological parent due to divorce is another adverse childhood experience. And there may be depression or mental illness in one of the parents. And where there are 3 or 4 of these items, then you'll see on the right-hand side an increase in depression, suicide attempts, and teen pregnancies. And here we have the impact of childhood trauma, and you'll see that there are many different areas: brain development, cognition, physical health, behavior, emotions, mental health, and relationships. And anybody who has seen children who are affected by their parents' divorce and by alienation will have observed these problems in the children. So we have the ACEs, and we have decreased quality of life because of the things we mentioned, depression and stress-related disorders. But there are also physiological effects. Vittorio Vezzetti, an Italian doctor, has written about this, influence on hormones and epigenetic effects. The children don't develop as they should, immune system disruption, and influence on puberty and height and eating disorders. These are all mental and physical health repercussions of parental separation and divorce, and they are, of course, exacerbated by parental alienating behavior. Among girls who may look for love, what they perceive as love, outside the family because the family is breaking up, may become pregnant. Boys and girls may resort to substance abuse, smoking, alcohol, and drugs in order to relieve the pain of observing their family breaking up. And the effects persist into adulthood, as the medical people have told us. As far as the parents are concerned, there are also incidents of depression, stress-related disorders, eating disorders, substance abuse, work-related accidents, and also suicidality. Studies in Australia, for example, have shown that a large number of men commit suicide or think about suicide when they are separated from their children because of alienating behaviors. And suicide itself is a very severe reaction. And all these things cost the state money. They cost the state money because of the increased incidence and morbidity losses, quality of life losses, and the state has to pay for psychological rehabilitation, for psychiatric hospitalization and outpatient treatment. The physical health goes down, visits to family doctors, medications, emergency rooms, hospitalization, therapy, and rehabilitation. All these cost money to the state, and if they can be avoided, and we will show how we think they can be avoided, then the state will save money. We move over from the health ramifications to the legal ramifications. If the case comes to court, then where there's a case between the parents, one against the other, there has to be lay by the state. The judge has to have his salary. The secretariat has to have have their salaries. The court building has to be rented or bought or maintained. Where there are legal aid, then that's an expense to the state. And social workers in family court social services and outside have to be paid for. These are all costs of adversarial proceedings where there's a fight. And where a child is found to be in need of protection, then there will be what are called public law ramifications, judge, secretariat, and all that legal aid, but also a social worker or a probation officer to provide a report to the court. So, and when a child is engaged in criminal behavior, he may join gangs because he thinks that he needs a parent and finds the gang leader to be his parent, or he needs a family and he finds friendships in the gang. Then, if he's involved in criminal behavior, then the police are involved and the attorney has to prosecute, judge and court expenses, legal aid for the defendant, probation services, prison costs, all these cost the state money. In education, it's known that many children who are affected by parental divorce will be disruptive in school, or they will have low achievement because of learning disabilities, or they may stay away from school because they're doing other things. All these things cost money to the education system. And of course, the costs of providing social workers to help with the couple relationship and child-parent relationships, issues relating to children who are in need of social work support. In court matters, as we've seen, welfare officers have to give reports, probation officers have to give reports, and there may be therapy by a social worker or referrals to other professionals. All these cost money. So the object of the research that we want to do, and if anybody who is listening to this is interested in helping with the research, being a partner with us, or to fund the research, then please let us know. My email address is at the bottom of the slides, and it'll be on the last slide. Minimizing human and economic costs depends on 3 stages. Prevention, stopping it happening before it happens. But if a child is suffering, then we need to equip professionals who deal with children with the ability to identify a child who is having trouble and to refer the child and the parents for immediate intervention. This may take the form of counseling for the parents, encouraging them to go to mediation, encouraging them not to litigate the matter, but to deal with matters by agreement, and intervention with the child in order to get the child help as early as possible in order that matters will not deteriorate. So there are 3 stages of prevention. Primary, no child should have to experience the problems of contact with the parent, even when the parents separate or divorce. As we say, identification, early identification, immediate intervention. There is a 3rd stage, of course, and that is where the case comes to the court, either because the parents cannot agree or because one parent is getting in the way of agreement. And there, even when the family are in court, it should be possible to refer the parents for alternative dispute resolution, co-parenting training, reunification processes and therapy for the child. All these may reduce harm. So the first stage of prevention is educating the public. Professor Burnett, whom I know and respect, has mentioned the nonsense that's being taught about parental alienation, the fake news and the non-academic studies, the misuse of statistics, and the projection from individual cases to the general case. So there is a need for a campaign of informing the public about the effects of separation and divorce on children. Unfortunately, separation and divorce are so common that they've become banal. But as far as the children are concerned, it's not banal at all. It's going to affect their lives completely. So the public need to be informed about the dangers and damage. Later today, I have a meeting with a group here in Israel. We have a retired, very senior social worker, a mediator who is also a social worker, a psychologist who does opinions for the court and therapy, and myself, producing a document which we hope will be distributed on the social media and will give advice to parents as to how to separate in a way which will minimize danger to the child. Youngsters need to be educated about relationships, to know who not to marry, who are the people who have the issues of personality disorders and who not to have children with. We need to educate students of the professions, psychology, social work, law, psychiatry, medicine, education, therapy, about the effects of separation and divorce and of alienating behaviors, with emphasis on the knowledge about the needs of the children. Even if the parent is the client of the psychologist or of the lawyer, they have to have their eyes on what's happening to the children. And the way we do that is interdisciplinary training and work methods. The professionals, workers in all professions, and that was about the students. Now we're talking about the people who are in the professions. They also need to be trained and educated about all these things. And that can be done in interdisciplinary training, it can be done in-service training seminars, continuing education, and so forth. And the same professions, psychology, social work, law, medicine, education, therapy, and the like. So that's the first part. That was the prevention. Now we have identification and intervention in the education system. I've done this. I've lectured to principals and teachers and counselors about the effects of parental separation and divorce, alienating behaviors, and how to spot the signs of distress in a child, and appointing somebody in each school to speak to the parents and explain to them they need help and to refer them to get help. Psychologists in public and private sector, hospitals, need to know about the effects of alienating behaviors on children and on separation and divorce. And again, to know about the needs of children, signs of distress, parental behaviors, and how to intervene, and the need for local interdisciplinary collaboration. Social workers in public institutions, schools, hospitals, court services, private practice, child protection agencies, they also need to know about these things. And they need to be able to how to talk to children and parents and how to refer them to get help. And they need to know what's going on in the locality. Who are the therapists who can help these parents and their children? These prevention methods and early identification, immediate intervention will cost money. But what we are expecting to show in the research is that the cost will be far less than the cost of the damage to children. Publicity will cost money. Advertisements on television and in the newspapers cost money. Social media and websites, they're less costly, but in our opinion, we would hope to show that these costs are nevertheless minimal. As far as providing services for children, young adults, curriculum building, providing suitable materials, children in many countries receive relationship education when they get to the middle grades of high school. And this only means adding materials not a lot, to what's already being taught. Similarly, lectures, seminars, conferences, academic writing, joint interdisciplinary courses and clinics, those can be welded on to the existing programs in colleges without substantial extra cost. And for legal, mental health, social work, and educational professionals, again, they are required to undergo in-service training, and therefore it is clear that they will benefit from this education, but the cost will be minimal. It may just need 2 or 3 hours of training a year for each individual. The methodology of the research, for those who are interested, I've put in a few slides from my colleague, Gary Ginsberg, about the methodology of the research, and we will investigate all of the issues, the costs of not intervening and the cost of intervening, with a view to show that in reducing the incidence of harm and in cutting back the use of
You have
services.
only 5 minutes, please.
Thank you.
Philip.
Yes,
Thank you.
I'm very close to the end. We would hope to show that the reduction in the costs of social services, legal services, and physical health services and remedial education, those will be saved. And the cost of intervention will be far less than the cost of not intervening. This is the formula. We talk about quality adjusted lifetime, and that's the formula which the economists will use. So the results are that we expect the chances of interventions will be at least cost effective and even will save a large amount of money. The probability of a child who's alienated being harmed is very high. The intervention costs are pretty low, as I've pointed out. We don't need new services or systems. What we need is to include in existing services and systems the educational part, and we put the emphasis on interdisciplinary work. It's important that judges and lawyers and psychologists and social workers who are involved in these cases should work in coordination, and we've written about that. The expected treatment costs are very high, often dealing with long-term chronic ailments and social disabilities. The gains in the child's quality of life are expected to be very high, and the probability of prevention and interventions being successful is also expected to be high. So, if we can show the politicians, if we can show the civil servants in the state finance department that these interventions for prevention are cost effective and cost saving, then they should be persuaded to catalyze the adoption and funding of prevention and the other things we've been speaking about. And it will increase the quality of life of at-risk people and reduce the monetary and physical burden on the existing mental and physical health and social services. We need the research. I would be very grateful if a call would come out from this conference advising, promoting, and demanding that the research be done, because the savings in human life and the savings in money are, as we expect to prove, very, very high, and will make the life of children and their parents much better. And that, of course, is our objective. So you see in the last line here, my email address. I'll put it on the contact details in the people who are attending by Zoom. And I wish the conference every good wish. I see there are some raised hands And if there are any questions, then please put them to me. I'll be delighted to answer. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Philip Marcus. Ahora va a dar nuestra conferencia el doctor David Alonso Ramírez Acuña, que es doctor, viene de Costa Rica, especialmente para este congreso. Doctor en Psicología Clínica y Forense, maestría en Psicología Clínica, como perito judicial, especialista en el área de familia, realizó evaluaciones psicológicas forenses en conflicto por guarda de crianza, separaciones y divorcios, régimen de interrelación familiar, procesos de adopción, nombramiento de tutor, curador, acompañamiento y seguimiento a medidas de protección, asumiendo roles en coordinación parental, evaluación y restitución internacional de personas menores de edad, uso de la Cámara de Gesell en procesos de revinculación parento-filial. Es profesor de posgrado, director y lector de tesis en Iberoamérica y dicta cursos, seminarios, talleres, conferencias en América Latina y América del Sur. Su conferencia va a ser sobre las repercusiones psicosociales de la violencia parental en los hijos de parejas parentales mal divorciadas. Cuando concluya el doctor Ramírez Acuña, va a estar abierta las preguntas y se le puede preguntar a cualquiera de las personas que han intervenido, inclusive al doctor Philip Marcus.